OpenAI CEO Sam Altman appeared before Congress. It was his first ever testimony in front of Congress, and he spoke at a hearing called by Senators Richard Blumenthal and Josh Hawley. And the topic was how to oversee and establish safeguards for artificial intelligence. So this hearing lasted nearly 3 hours, and it did focus largely on Altman and OpenAI, though IBM executive Christina Montgomery was there, as well as Gary Marcus, who is a leading AI expert, academic, and entrepreneur. They both also testified. Now, during the hearing, Altman covered a ton of different topics, including a discussion of different risks posed by AI and what should be done to address those risks, as well as how companies should be developing AI technology. And what was really interesting is Altman even suggested that AI companies be regulated, possibly through the creation of one or more federal agencies, or controversially, some type of licensing requirement. Now, this hearing, like most things in our politics today, was divisive. Some of the experts applauded what they saw as much needed urgency from the federal government in tackling these important safety issues with AI. Others, however, criticized the hearing for being way too friendly, and they cited some worries that companies like OpenAI are now angling to have undue influence over the regulatory and legislative process. Now, we should also note, if you're unfamiliar with congressional hearings in the United States, this hearing just appeared to be informational in nature. It wasn't called because OpenAI is in any sort of trouble. And it does appear to be just one of and the first of many such hearings and committee meetings on AI that are happening moving forward. So, Paul, like you mentioned, we're going to do something slightly different in this episode. We're going to tackle this hearing from 3 different angles as our 3 main topics today. And we're also going to talk through a series of lower profile but very important government meetings on AI that occurred at the same time. So first, we'll kind of deep dive into what actually happened at the Altman hearing and what was discussed and what that means for marketers and business leaders. We're then going to take a closer look at some big issues in AI safety that were discussed during the hearing. And last but not least, we'll talk through the regulatory measures being considered and mentioned during the hearing and what dangers there are, if any, of AI companies kind of tilting the regulatory process in their favor. And as part of that, we'll also run through exactly what went down in these other meetings on AI that were had at the federal government level last week. So, Paul, before we dive into the details of the Altman hearing, can you contextualize how significant was this hearing?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying Mike and I are not experts on this stuff. Like this is above our pay grade in terms of like how the government bodies work, how the laws of the land work. And I really just like, we want to dedicate this episode to raise awareness about this and offer some perspective and try and give some context to what's going on based on our perception and knowing the players involved and different things like that. But this is a really important area. And I do think that part of our effort here is to surface it for everyone and make sure everyone is paying attention, and that you do find the people who are like the true experts in the different related areas here, and you follow along as this is developing, because it's going to impact all of us. So that all being said, in earlier episodes, I'd have to go back and figure out which episodes. I remember saying multiple times, like, Altman's going to have his day in front of the Senate. Like he'll have his Zuckerberg moment, I think is what I called it. And here we go. Here we are. It was like two months later. So it came a little faster than I expected. So my overall take is I would not expect much action in the near term as a result of these hearings. I think what's happening, and this is not meant to be cynical, I think this is realist. I think that both sides right now of the political spectrum in the United States are trying to figure out what is going on, trying to understand this technology, and trying to figure out how the public will react to these different elements, because they have to win votes next year. And so they're trying to decide, is AI a hot button issue in the election next year? And what do our voters care about? And so is it jobs? Is it safety? What are the elements of AI that they need to really dig into and kind of pull that thread so that they can win votes? So I do believe that there are altruistic reasons why these hearings are happening right now, but I also think that they are probably outweighed by political posturing, and it's critical regardless of why they're happening, and it's important and noteworthy and newsworthy. But I do think that these are probably more for show and for exploration to figure out how this is going to play in the election cycle than it is turning this into new laws in the next 12 to 18 months.
Gotcha. So there was a lot of ground covered during this hearing, and I would highly recommend people go read in the show notes, either transcripts or summaries from news outlets, because there was a lot of ground covered. But in your mind, what were kind of the main takeaways from the actual content of the hearing?
The government knows it's a major issue. Like that does become obvious. So again, even if this is for, political posturing and votes and the 2024 election cycle, it's obvious that they are investing a lot of time and energy trying to figure out this topic. It also is clear that the tech companies, or at least Sam Altman representing the tech companies, uh, believe they need oversight, or that again, the cynic
Mm,
approach to this is they know oversight is coming,
mm,
and they might as well try and take a leadership role in getting that oversight to be in the best interest possible of the tech companies. So I think that they're very well aware that whether they want it or not, it will likely come in some form. So I think they're just pushing for the government to get involved now before the AI gets way more advanced. I do believe, I don't know Sam Altman personally. I've listened to a lot of interviews with Sam, and um, he seems like a relatively complicated guy. Uh, but I do believe that he believes that what they build next is going to have a major impact on society, and I believe
mm.
he truly is trying to prepare society for this. And so I want to assume that what he is doing is largely truly for the good of humanity and society. And so I think when he's saying these things, that I don't know that he really has too many underlying motives other than he actually really believes this is very important that we get this right. So um, those kind of jumped out to me. And then the the thing I wanted to do was go through a few quick opening thoughts from each of the three players, because I think it helps set the stage. So again, as you mentioned, there was the three main people there. It was Sam Altman, the CEO, co-founder of OpenAI, Christina Montgomery, the chief privacy and trust officer at IBM, and then Gary Marcus, who's a professor and author, and kind of the antagonist to Jan LeCun on Twitter. Like these two are every day at each other. It's kind of funny. So Altman, just a couple of key points. So he said the U.S. government might consider a combination of licensing and testing for development and release of AI models above thresholds of capabilities, and ensuring that the most powerful AI models adhere to a set of safety requirements, facilitating processes to develop and update safety measures, and examining opportunities for global coordination. So he did come to the table with some specific ideas around what he thought was needed. Christina Montgomery mentioned that she kind of like slightly different approach. Said IBM urges Congress to adopt a precision regulation approach to AI. This means establishing rules to govern the deployment of AI in specific use cases, not regulating the technology itself.
Mm.
She went on to say, um, and businesses also play a critical role in ensuring the responsible deployment of AI. Companies active in developing or using AI must have strong internal governance, including, among other things, designating a lead AI ethics office official responsible for an organization's trustworthy AI strategy, standing up an ethics board or a similar function as a centralized clearinghouse for resource to help guide implementing that strategy. And then she also mentioned it's a pivotal moment. Clear, reasonable policy and sound guardrails are critical. And then Gary Marcus, again, sort of the antagonist to the tech company, he had a few key points here. So he said there are benefits to AI, obviously, but we don't know whether they will outweigh the risks. Fundamentally, these new systems are going to be destabilizing. He offered some very specific instances where he saw this could occur. He said, we want, for example, for our systems to be transparent, to protect our privacy, to be free of bias, and above all else, to be safe. but current systems are not in line with these values. This was interesting because he's saying, basically taking shots at OpenAI,
Mm.
sitting 2 feet from Sam Altman. He said, but the current systems are not in line with these values. Current systems are not transparent. They do not adequately protect our privacy, and they continue to perpetuate bias. And even their makers don't entirely understand how they work, which is true. Most of all, we cannot remotely guarantee that they're safe. And hope here is not enough. The big tech companies' preferred plan boils down to trust us. But why should we? The sums of money at stake are mind boggling. And he talks about OpenAI kind of causing this by forcing things out into the market, and Microsoft as well to blame. And then he says, and that forced Alphabet to rush out products and de emphasize safety. Humanity has taken a back seat. AI is moving incredibly fast with lots of potential, but also lots of risks. We obviously need government involved, and we need the tech companies involved, both big and small. But we also need independent scientists, which is kind of like his thing. So again, the perspectives here were varying. It was an interesting mix of people. I don't know how they picked those 3 people out of all the people that could be there. But I think, again, it was just helpful to get the context of what the 3 main people were saying in their opening statements, which then led to the rest of the hearing.
So, does this hearing, after you've kind of studied it and reviewed it, give you any confidence or any more confidence that we'll see timely and sensible AI regulations from the US government?
No, I mean, I don't think this hearing does anything for
Mm.
that. I think it's helpful, hopefully, that the senators were listening. I've watched enough Senate hearings in my day to know half the time they're not even in the room when the key questions are being asked. But this one seemed relatively nonpartisan. So I don't know. There's a part of me who wants to think it's going to do something, but overall, I don't think this hearing was much more than a starting point. I don't think it's going to accelerate anything. But at the end of this conversation today, we're going to talk about the other 3 hearings that were going on. That does give me hope that there actually may be way more happening behind the scenes than most of us were aware of prior to this.